Dear listeners, welcome to Out of Office. Welcome to the LTS podcast Out of Office Solo Edition. Today, I will be your host for this recording. My name is Marcos. Now, hopefully you are doing well wherever and wherever you're listening to this episode, and let's dig in. The letter of this episode is C for cybersecurity, where we'll discuss the latest news, trends, and developments in the field of cybersecurity. And I'm here to help you learn more about how to protect yourself from cyber threats and how cybersecurity affects our lives in different ways. In this episode, I have a set of stories, topics mainly, that cover a range of cybersecurity issues such as spyware attacks, penetration testing, and aviation safety. Whether you are a novice or an expert, you will find something interesting and useful in this podcast. So let's get started. Now, I'm not gonna say that I'm an expert, dear listener, but I'm interested, and I try to do the work to try to introduce you to it. And hopefully you can gain something from these stories and some insight that I can probably introduce to it. And again, I'm not an expert, and this is not advice that you have to follow always, but it's something that I want you to be aware of and hopefully can learn something that you can take into your personal life, hopefully for the better. Okay? So let's start with the first segment. Cyberattacks. How to protect yourself from the latest threats. This story was an announcement by Apple. Apple warns journalists of Russian spyware attacks on iPhones. So, Apple detected and prevented a sophisticated cyber attack that targeted several journalists with the infamous Pegasus spyware, which can access your messages, calls, photos, and location without your knowledge. Find out what you can do to keep your device and data safe from hackers. The sources will be in the notes, okay? This one is brought to you by the Business Insider. So, personally, I'm not an iPhone user. Presently, I'm not an iPhone user. I was one, and back in my day, there wasn't that many things to worry about back in the iPhone 5 days. And now it's interesting that the more people get to use it, there's a bigger network. Obviously, Windows, I'm still a Windows user. There was, Apple was famous for not having that many threats, mainly because the pool of users of said Apple computers wasn't that big compared to the whole world of Windows. And there was more spyware, more packages to assault Windows devices back in those days. But now, since a lot of people have jumped into the Apple ecosystem, guess what? There's going to be spyware developed for it. And here comes the Pegasus system. Mind you, dear listeners, the Pegasus system is not only for iPhone and Apple devices. It's also for us Android users, and mainly sometimes even Windows, but mainly this is about smartphones. So neither iPhone nor Android are safe, dear listener. So with that in mind, let's find out what we can gain from the next story. How to check if your iPhone is infected by Pegasus and what to do next. Find out how you can use a free tool called MVT, Mobile Verification Toolkit, to scan your phone for traces of Pegasus infection. Follow the step-by-step instructions on how to download, install, and run the MVT on your iPhone or Android device. Learn what to do if you discover any signs of Pegasus activity on your phone, such as reporting it to the authorities, backing up your data, and resetting your device. Source in the notes. And this is brought to you by The Wire. So again, dear listeners, no smartphone is safe nowadays. And people working in the government, may that be using Android, iPhone, whichever, you guys are more exposed to this because people want to target you. These packages were made by another government that are being sent to those devices. So mind you, dear listeners, stay safe out there, and hopefully this article can help you. Mind you, it's not instructions that you have to follow without any prior third-party checking. I recommend not only to read the source if you have the time or want to know, but to also check with third parties and professionals just in case, like reporting it to the authorities, to the proper authorities for your iPhone or for your Android. I wasn't able to find any places to report for Android, but mind you, I'll keep checking, and they'll probably post an updated version for both iPhone and Android on the social media like Twitter in my case. Dear listeners, so stay tuned. Now, let's find out what other competitors, what other threats there are besides the Pegasus spyware. Rain, a Pegasus-like spyware. Learn how a new report from Citizen Lab exposed the existence of Rain, a spyware very similar to Pegasus in many ways. Find out how Rain was made by an Israeli company called Quadri and was used to spy on at least 5 civil society victims in North America, Central Asia, Southeast Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. Understand how Rain works and what it can do to your iPhone, such as accessing your contacts, messages, photos, location, microphone, and camera. Source in the description by Phone Arena. Again, this story is very iPhone heavy, but it's the one that reported with the keynote speech. So I gotta give it to them. They try to keep their user base up to date, and us Android users up to date as well. But hopefully, Google can get up to this as well and report it to their Android users. That's just me speaking as a wish that another tech company can, cover their Android user base. Maybe Samsung, or I don't know who else. I'm thinking Google. I'm thinking Samsung and OnePlus. Those are me. This is me just thinking out loud, dear listener. The solo edition. Now that I gave you some bits of news regarding the latest threats for you, dear listener, let's find out on learning of how some of these hacks take place. Cybersecurity education. Learn from the experts. I'm gonna learn today, the listener as well. A hacker answers penetration test questions from Twitter. So this is a YouTube video that I put in the set list. Again, in the description. So this video talks about how an expert that I'm not gonna say the name because it's hashtag not sponsored. They're asked questions of what their packages are for them for infiltrating companies. They get paid, they get set contracts on how to infiltrate. 9 times out of 10, the way that these people hack into the system is because of human error. So there you have it, dear listeners. Us reading, clicking, unknowingly talking to strangers about company stuff is what exposes us in our iPhones, our Android devices, or phones, but also our company. So hopefully, dear listeners, you can watch this video and it's like 10 questions, but this individual goes in depth on tactics that they do to get into systems. It's a camouflage game, dear listeners. Like you think it's a professional individual that's supposed to be there, but no, it's a hacker dressed up to the nines with the suit professionally, passing through security like it's nobody's business, like he belongs there. So dear listeners, hopefully this video can give you some tips and tricks for your workplace or your personal business that you can protect yourself. Okay? So, on to the next. Cybersecurity implications, how it affects our lives. So, dear listener, now with a very tech-heavy world, there are some events that nobody is safe from, or companies, or corporations, or militaries for this situation. Marine Corps suspends F-35B operations after crash. Learn how the Marine Corps has temporarily halted the flight operations of its F-35B fleet after the crash of one of its jets in South Carolina. Find out what the Marine Corps is doing to investigate the cause of the crash and ensure the safety of its pilots and aircraft. Source brought to you by military.com. So, dear listeners, this jet is a very tech-heavy jet. Like nowadays, it's always been tech-heavy, fly-by-wire, if you will, that it inputs a fly-by-wire, dear listener, on jets. That's been around since the 70s, I want to say. Has been an instrument that the pilot inputs some commands with the joystick, and back in the early days it used to be by tension strings on the World War I planes with the Wright brothers, that you pull the string to the left, that string with the strength of the pilot, it would go left, right, up, down. Then during World War II, it was again some string, some hydraulics, because the planes got bigger and heavier, so the plane needed more hydraulics. Creates pressure 10 times greater than just the pilot, but still needed the pilot to do the input and some strength of its own hands to fly the plane. But then during the 70s, or the Cold War, the US specifically implemented this technology called fly-by-wire, which there was a lot of more circuitry into the fighter pilot aircrafts, the cargo aircrafts, all those things, where they input some pounds of pressure or kilograms of pressure, and the plane would interpret it via computers and all those things, via servos, via hydraulics, a combination of both, but the person was not directly connected onto the plane itself. In this case, for the F-35, it's even more complicated. Not only hydraulics, not only electronics, but then there's a lot of more computers into the system of how to make the plane fly very precisely, glide. It has a vertical takeoff feature, it makes it easier and allows the pilot to be more precise. But because of whatever circumstance, the pilot had to eject. And before ejecting, I did extra research on this. The pilot put the plane on autopilot. So the pilot exited the vehicle in a very harsh manner. He was sent to the hospital. According to some stories, he's still okay. But yeah, he took off and the plane did not crash right there. It flew away, I think up to 80 miles, and it was over an $80 million plane. So you already know, dear listeners, these planes are not cheap. But investigation is still happening as of this recording. And mind you, dear listeners, I'll also try to, put some snippets here and there for what's going on if you're interested. Of course, follow me on Twitter, or the LTS podcast on Twitter, and you'll find out more there. And now to the next story. Remember, dear listeners, how I was talking about how iPhone and Android isn't safe? Now remember, what other services besides the internet, going onto Twitter, going onto your Facebook, going into whatever's YouTube, YouTube or whatever you use, and you're not in a home Wi-Fi or in a public Wi-Fi, what do you use? Your cellular data. Well, here goes a company getting exposed, their stuff, and exposing customers. So let's listen to the story. T-Mobile's latest security debacle was apparently caused by a quote system glitch rather than a hack. Discover how a system glitch caused some T-Mobile customers see other customers' personal data, including addresses and payment methods to other customers. Understand what kind of data was exposed and how T-Mobile fixed the issue. Source in the notes. Brought to you by Phone Arena. Phone Arena is a pretty good place to gather information, dear listeners, but again, you can find more sources. This is the one that I felt more comfortable sharing with you, dear listeners. So I did a little bit of extra digging. Turns out that when they were updating their hardware, they somewhere in their servers and all those things, they left more, and super simplified, dear listeners, they left a switch on instead of off, and a switch off instead of off, and that enabled to other users, like approximately 100 million T-Mobile users, hashtag not sponsored, not yet, anyways, that allowed users, whenever they logged into their apps, like on their phone, to not log in with any passwords, and no passwords were necessary. So this exposed any people that you already know, dear listeners, that out there's people checking if other companies are slacking, if there's any breaches. So unfortunately, approximately 100 million people were exposed to this. Let's see what T-Mobile will do to compensate those users. I'm looking for like identity protection, as if their identity was robbed, something like that. Stay tuned to also keep you updated to this story. And now, I don't feel comfortable sharing what service I use, but I can tell you a story about how my personal banking information with a credit card company. I got a letter in the mail like in 2016, that unfortunately your information was leaked due to a hack. And I was like reading this on a letter, and they were saying, yeah, we can offer some identity protection, or we can reimburse you of any service. Like, I was happy with this credit card company that they were on the ball to protect my identity, mainly because I think they wanted to keep me as a customer. They probably lost some customers with that, but at least with me, they didn't lose me. And that's my little snippet of how nowadays not even the credit card companies are safe from being hacked. In this case with T-Mobile, though, it was a slip up when they were installing new hardware. So now, from hardware, talking about new hardware, let's talk about robots in New York City. New York Police. A new robot patrols Times Square subway station. Learn how the NYPD is testing a 400-pound security robot that can record video, scan for threats, and report incidents. Find out how K5 works, what it can and cannot do, and how much it costs to lease. Sources in the notes. Brought to you by USA Today. So, dear listeners, there you have it. New York City is integrating some robots to patrol some train stations. And I did some extra research. I found that the New York police were actually trying to pitch it that you're going to save money compared to giving a salary to more police officers, which is a strategy I would like. If I'm being asked if I'm happy or not, it's a step. I feel it could have been better. You could have been the local New York governor could invest in more services to help the people in order for them to not try to do crime. But then again, there's always going to be people that are going to try to test defenses to try to find exploits. For that group of people, even if you give them services, you will get them. They'll want to find exploits. Hey, they're only human. I can respect that. So the solution is, I want to say, a little bit more monitoring, more invasion of privacy. But then again, it's in a public subway station. There's nothing private about that. Once you enter to that premise, you are like the local government. Once you enter into this premise, you are to hopefully to follow the rules that are set there to you to follow. So this robot, even if I'm in disagreement with this money, the money that it takes to maintain, purchase, lease this service with the robot, I feel it could have been invested into other services to help people, even if it's the police or people that are in poor conditions, to help them to be better. But for the now, I trust. I trust. I don't trust. I wouldn't pass it by in the New York Police Department to have a lot more information on what is needed. Don't get me wrong, they could be wrong, and I'm open to being wrong as well myself, dear listener. So catch me up with more information, stuff that I missed on my little research, and you could always reach out, DM or via Instagram or on Twitter. Again, the LTS podcast link for Twitter and all our social medias will be in the description of this podcast, dear listener. If you agree or disagree with the robot in New York City Times Square, the train station, reach out. My verdict is still too soon. It just came out this week as of the recording. I'm a little bit excited to it, and I want to believe. That's all I want to say. I want to believe that the New York City government is doing the right thing. And that's it for that part. Oh yeah, and something else that they also showed was that they showed a canine, robotic canine that has a camera setup and a grenade launcher system that whenever cars are running away or stolen cars and all those things, it's like a grenade launcher. It's like a sticky ball that sticks to the car, and it's a GPS tracker. That sounds interesting. Imagine that's including the robot. So imagine the price for that, the training for that, and the maintenance for that. I'm just saying that, dear listener. It's exciting, but at the same time, I have my thoughts that it could have been done to something better, put into something better. But again, the government might have more information out there on what is needed. And with that, dear listener, that's all for this episode of the Life Tech and Sundry Out of Office podcast solo edition. I hope you enjoyed listening to these topics and learned something new and useful. Cybersecurity is a fascinating and important field that affects us all in different ways. We should always be aware of the cyber threats that we face and take the necessary steps to protect ourselves and our devices. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please feel free to contact us at Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, or on YouTube. And remember, please give us 5 stars and follow us on your favorite podcast catcher. From the bottom of my heart and the heart of LTS, thank you for tuning in, and stay safe. And remember, stay frosty.